What's up, Ryan and Katie?
Hey, Dr. John. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you guys?
Good. We're doing great.
Doing all right.
Fantastic. Thanks for calling in. So what's going on?
Yeah, so just for some context, so we have a 16-year-old daughter. We're kind of hitting a rock and a hard place, if you will. So we co-parent. So we have, essentially kind of a blended family. So she lives almost half the time with us, and then the other half with her dad and her stepmom. And she's under our car insurance, our health insurance, phone bill, you name it. She came to us a couple months ago and asked about getting on birth control. She recently started dating a boy, and she came to us with that. And, we strong believers, go to church as much as we can. And so the first thing, obviously, we thought of was absolutely not happening. She wanted to go to, a center to do this. And obviously with her being on our insurance, they essentially needed our approval. So she came to us. And so again, our first thought was absolutely not. And we told her that if you choose to go there by yourself, which unfortunately in this day and age, you don't need adult supervision. You don't need a sign off or anything. We were very clear, and we told her, if you go by yourself, or if you do over the counter, what have you, and you get on it yourself, then we are not supporting you as far as insurance wise. And you will either need to find your own insurance or talk to your dad about going on his insurance. And basically just saying, if you want to make an adult choice like that, then you're considering yourself an adult. And so you need to support yourself.
Did that include housing too?
It did, yes. Like we were very, very firm in that. And again, she's always had a room here, but it hurt, number one. But then at the same time, we were like, we weren't model citizens at 16, 17, 18 years old. And we live with regret. And we told her that. It's like, we feel that regret, even being married for as long as we have now. It's baggage. And, she's a 16-year-old, her brain isn't fully developed, but she just doesn't understand that. And so, yes, to some parents, it'd be extremely strict, but at the same time, she does have her dad's house to live in, which her dad and her stepmom, they certainly didn't encourage her, but they were fine with bringing her because in their words, it's better to be safe than sorry, right? And so, honestly, Dr. John, like the biggest wall for Katie and I was, do we essentially sacrifice our beliefs as Christians and our values, or do we risk damaging the relationship? And in hindsight, I'm glad we didn't sacrifice our values, because a couple weeks later, after she initially brought it up, Katie moved her car for just moving it. We weren't digging or hunting or looking for anything. And we found out that she had went out and bought her own. And so we said, this is it. Like you made that choice. And so essentially, yes, we kicked her out and said, you're kind of on your own. Again, she's always had her dad's house to go to, and she made that choice. And so she's been living with her dad since. And again, this is probably a month or two has passed. Do we sacrifice damaging the relationship to, withhold our beliefs as believers in Christ and reserving sex for marriage? And even if we didn't do that ourselves, but just to try and give our daughter the best chance at as little a baggage as possible, and to have the most rewarding and fulfilling marriage with her, future husband as possible.
Yeah, I'm going to be, so two things. One, I'm grateful for you calling. Okay. And I know that, here's what I know. I know that y'all stood firm on what you think and thought is right and was right. And I also know that it has to be killing you or you wouldn't have called. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Shoot. All right. So I'm going to go unfiltered a little bit. And my promise on this show is to always tell the truth. Is that fine?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's why we called.
So I have a little girl and she's 8. All right. And based on my experience and my wife's experience as elementary, middle school, and high school and college educators, we've already started having the conversations, as crazy as that is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And my son is 14. Obviously, we've been having the conversations for years. I can think of no more potentially damaging thing to the developing understanding of what love and relationship looks like on a potential future marriage. I would put sexual abuse at number 1. I would put getting kicked out of my mom and dad's house at 16 at number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a more terrifying, damaging, frightening thing for a 16-year-old daughter to find out there is a line to which you are not welcome in our presence anymore. And we're going to even go searching for that to make sure you haven't crossed it. We found it and you're out. Now, I can't wrap my head around no even secular psychologist. Nobody in their right mind would say being sexually active at 16 is smart, wise, intelligent, otherwise, quote unquote, okay. I don't know any psychologist, counselor, therapist. If they are suggesting a 16-year-old should be sexually active, then I would suggest they should have their license removed because you're right. It's a child. They're a kid.
Yeah.
The challenge here is an old Paul Thomas Anderson quote. I'm sure he didn't make it up, but you may be through with the past, but the past is not through with you. And so what we have here is, for whatever reason, a divorce happened a long time ago, or there's a child was born a long time ago. And now the child is 16, and that child is being forced to reckon with 2 different households with 2 different rules. And y'all can say, or they can say, that they're not encouraging. But for a 16-year-old, you're either for or you're against. There's not a lot of gray with a 16-year-old.
Right.
So if I'm willing to take you to put you on birth control, I'm consenting. Right? I'm saying I'm giving you the affirmative message that this is going to be. We know kids are just going to be kids, and they're going to do it anyway. So ... Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the 16-year-old who's caught between, am I loyal to my dad and my stepmom, or am I loyal to my mom and my stepdad? That's too much to ask a 16-year-old. And if that 16-year-old is in my house, I've got a whole bunch more control. And I have a whole bunch more ability to play defense. But for whatever reason, the adults in this child's life split up and created 2 separate households. And so my ability to play defense is much more compromised. I can't, because half the time or more, she's going to stay somewhere else with a different set of rules and a different set of values. And that was the bargain we struck up when we split up. And so what I would tell you is, and we'll get to the sex part and the birth control part and all that. If I have one message that I would give to parents over and over and over, it's this. Absent, you have made my house unsafe, meaning you're doing drugs inside my house and it's not safe, or you're bringing people to my house that you won't take out of your life and my home is unsafe. I never want my kid to believe there's a line that they can cross where I won't love them. I've talked to a woman whose son was convicted of sexually abusing children, like a late teenage kid. And I said, because she was asking, do I hire the best lawyers and do I burn this thing to the ground? I said, no, your child is a predator. He needs to be off the street. She said, well, what do I do? And I said, you can hold his hand in court, right? As he is taken out of the community. He does not need to be in public, and you know that. But he also needs to know his mom loves him, despite the evil, right? So I'm telling you that to tell you this. That's a tough decision. So I want to back out and ask you guys, how do you reconcile biblical value A, we believe sex should be reserved for marriage, and anyone in our life who violates that has to be removed from our life, versus the biblical value of forgiveness and grace, and I'm going to be a parent who's always in the life of my child. I'm not going to cast my child out. How do you reconcile those two biblical values?
Yeah, that's a
good
great question.
Because
That's a great question.
let me ask you this: how much? And I hate to put y'all on the spot here, so tell me I'm wrong, okay? Tell me I'm wrong on any of this. Challenge any of this. Tell me I'm an idiot on any of this. Not gonna hurt my feelings, okay? How much of your anger and frustration is with the other parents?
Yeah, that's a great question. A little bit more context for you, Dr. John, is Abby, or our daughter, is my child from a previous relationship. We were not married.
Okay.
And so there is some anger and resentment. I was 16 when I got pregnant with her, and he left and did his thing. And so, yeah, there probably is some lingering anger and resentment, and that was 16 years ago.
So tell me about, you've walked down this road. Tell me about how your parents handled you when you were 16.
Yeah. I unfortunately also came from a broken family. My dad was married a few times, and my mom left when I was very, very young. And so I didn't have a mother figure in my life at that time when I was pregnant, or when I got pregnant. And it was my dad who supported my siblings and myself. And he wasn't absent, but he was busy. And but it happened, and he was supportive. He was upset at first, but he, from what I can remember, said, "We'll get through this together."
So you actually walked the path that I was going to bring up, and that is this. A 16-year-old, well, all children, but that's an especially acute window when a human being is growing more than they will, or aging more, to say it that way, than they will ever age in their life in a tiny window of time. And they are losing their sense of themselves on a daily basis and trying to cobble together a sense of self from social media, from friends, from teachers, from coaches, from parents, from romantic interest, from pets, right? They're cobbling this together, and it's like this ongoing duct taping puzzle thing in real time. It's chaos. You experience that.
Yeah.
What a child is going to seek more than anything is some sort of stable connection. I'm anchored into something. And one of the things that gets me the most riled up is when someone attaches God to that. That there's a couple of things you can do. You can smoke, you can drink alcohol, you can say bad words, and you can have premarital sex, and God's out on you.
Mm-hmm.
Second is mom and dad, parents. And a child is going to seek connection and seek connection and seek connection and seek connection. And if one set of parents cuts that connection off, and this is just 20 years working with young people, it will accelerate her going to find somebody that is stable, that will look at her and say, "I see you and I value you and I love you," even if it's just for a minute. And you've walked that line, right?
Absolutely.
And so my response here is to applaud y'all as parents for not wanting your daughter to be sexually active, and to really trying to figure out what are the ways we can keep that from happening. The challenge is not to put your anger and frustration and to relive your trauma and put that on a kid and say, you carry what happened to me back when I was 16. You carry this embarrassment and shame. You carry my frustration with this guy who left me 16 years ago and his new family, to not make her carry that. And so what I would suggest to you guys is it's not a compromise of your biblical values to double down and triple down and quadruple down on loving your kid. Kids are smart and savvy. They understand that at this house, here's the rules that I got to live by. And that at that house, these are the rules we're going to live by. They know that, and they can toggle and balance. But my suggestion to any parent going through what you're going through is to not double down on, there's a point with which you can no longer be in relationship with me, mom and dad. But the opposite. There is not you can't escape my love. You couldn't do anything where I won't love you. In this house, you can't be sexually active because I love you. In this house, there will be no boyfriends coming to stay past whenever. And I'm going to turn all the lights on. I'm going to be obnoxious because I'm your parent. And we will, dad, stepdad, you'll take your daughter on dates. Oh, are you kidding me? Yes. Mom, you'll take her out. Have you told her your story?
I have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be time for what I would call, like, I have a bad habit of grandstanding. Like, we're going to have this big event talk. I did one the other day with my son to talk about alcohol. And I was like, today we're talking about alcohol. And he just rattled off like 9 things. I know, Dad. I'm going to be tempted. It's going to be around. I'm not allowed to do it. You're always safe to call. And I was like, all right, guess this conversation, you know what I mean? So, but I want you to make it a weekly ritual that you take your kid out. You take your daughter out for breakfast. You take your daughter out for dinner. Dad, I want you to have stepdad, I want you to have like a journal that y'all share, just y'all two. And you put it on her bed when you're done with it, and she writes in it, and before she leaves, she's got to put it on your bed, even if it just says, this is dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But I want her to never feel like she has to go somewhere else to connect. The world's going to drag at her, and boyfriends are going to drag on her, and the world is going to want pieces of her enough. I want her so freaking anchored into y'all. Is that going to keep her from having sex? No, it's not. Kids are going to experiment. They're curious. They want to know what's cool, what's not cool, all that kind of stuff. But maybe it might. I think and I'm thinking this through in real time. Okay, so forgive me if I land in a place that I'm going to change my mind on in a few weeks. The data tells me that the more religious a state is, or let me say it this way, the states that report higher religiosity have higher teen pregnancy rates. And I don't know the causality to that. I've never dug into that. My just snapshot judgment is because people don't talk about sex. They just say no. Or they don't say, they don't speak clearly. We really want you to save. Here's our experience. We want you to save yourself for a marriage. This is our values. This is what we want to teach you. Whew. And if you're going to violate what we want for you and you're going to figure a way to sneak around and X, Y, and Z, please be safe. And here's how to do that. And that's a tricky balance for a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old. But I just look at the data, okay? Of increased teen pregnancy rates. If I just had a kid in my house, I would probably lean towards not taking a 16-year-old out to have birth control, and really doing what I could to play defense at my house. And I wish there was a better word for that. I'm not opposed to 16-year-olds don't have a right to go on dates, regardless of what people say about normal teen development. They don't have a right to those type of things. Those are privileges doled out as kids show responsibility and trustworthiness. But man, if my teenager is splitting time with somebody else who says things like, well, they're going to do it anyway, and I think he's cute and funny, man, I feel like we're playing with fire then. So I've talked a lot at y'all. Talk back. Throw back at me. Say, I reject y'all. I reject what you're saying. Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, no, it's for sure something to think about. And I think great great advice. I mean, it's hard. It's hard being a parent and of a teenager and also a blended family. But yeah, it's just.
Are you still close with your dad, Katie?
He's actually passed away now.
He passed away?
So.
Were y'all close up until the end?
We were. Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth the exercise that for you and Ryan. I think it's worth the exercise for you to go back to that moment, that terrifying moment when you're 16 years old and you find out you're pregnant and he gets mad and says, we're going to figure this out. That he was in a moment of, I need a parent, I need boundaries, I need love in the worst kind of way, that he doubled down on connection in his clumsy, crooked dad trying to figure it out with a pregnant 16-year-old daughter kind of way.
Yeah.
I think that's worthy of an exercise. I also, when I think of biblical values, guys, I keep going back to the prodigal son and the dad just waiting out in the yard.
Yeah.
And I think of Jesus drawn in the dirt to protect the woman who was just caught cheating on her husband. I just keep doubling down on, I keep going back to the person of Jesus in the stories is someone who steps into it and says, no, I see you. You're safe here with me. And then exhales and says, hey, there's another way to live. Instead of, you're going to live the right way or you are no longer in relationship with me, period. And maybe, man, I'm sure there's some theological debates and we could go round and round and that'd be a fun discussion. I love those discussions, but I'm just thinking about with my two kids. Seems the picture that comes up when I think of biblical value is over and over and over and over. You could never get away from me. I'm coming for you. And also, I don't want 16-year-olds having sex, right? I don't want 16-year-olds having sex either.
Yeah. I think a lot, Dr. John, is just it's really challenging just co-parenting.
It's a nightmare.
Because
it's a nightmare.
It's like you said earlier, it's just there's two different sets of rules, and we might be more lenient on some areas than the other household, and vice versa. And so
absolutely,
yeah, it's just challenging regardless.
It's a nightmare. My challenge to you two is don't make the 16-year-old carry the weight of that challenge. Find the places, and 16 is old enough to be very, very direct. Find the places where y'all align, where as as two different households, and find the places where you're different and sit down with your 16-year-old and say, here's where we're different, and we're not going to budge on these because we love you. And our set of experiences has given us this. And I know you get a different picture over there, but we're asking you to respect these here. So here's the $1 million question, then I'll let you guys go. If I'm y'all and I'm finding myself in your exact situation right now, I would reach out to that 16-year-old girl and both of you take her out. I'm tell you what I would do. I'm going to use the word I. I would take her out with her mom. God, I'm going to get all choked up thinking about my daughter here. I would take my daughter out and we would go somewhere private. And I would say, I need you to know I got scared and I blew it and I'm sorry. There's not a thing you can do that I won't ever stop loving you. And there's not a thing you could do outside of threaten my life or become very unsafe that this home is not going to be open for you. I screwed up. I got scared. I remember back when I was 16, we swore we would always protect you, and I freaked out. I'm sorry. And I want you to be here as much as possible. And if you're going to be here, it's what's going to cost you. You're going to have to go on a date with me once a month, and you're going to have to go eat breakfast with your mom once a week. And you and I are going to journal back and forth together. And we're going to rebuild our relationship together. And no, we don't want you having sex. I think it's a terrible idea. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. And we love you. I don't ever want you to go into some hairy-legged 16-year-old knuckleheaded little boy for love, because we love you. That's what I would do. That's the best I can tell you. That's what I would do. Man, I'm really grateful for the call, Ryan and Katie. This one's tough. Co-parenting is hard. It's hard, especially when it comes to sex and intimacy and birth control and entertainment, all those things that we're trying to balance and reconcile. But when it comes to a young kid, all the way through 18, all the way through 21, and this is just 20 plus years of me sitting with 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 through 25-year-olds, I'm always going to double down on what's a way I can increase connection, not decrease. What's the way I can get this kid closer to me and I can get closer to this kid? Then what's a way I can make this kid prove that they're worthy of being in my home or my presence? And maybe I'm on an island, but that's the way I live my life. Thanks for the call, Ryan and Katie. Y'all are brave, and I'm really grateful for you. Call anytime.